So I'm going to give you a little snapshot about MATC, and Dr. Gomez gave you a little bit of that, and I may be reiterating some of the same points, but I think it's important nonetheless to re-emphasize some of these things. And we've developed some fact sheets here that specifically highlight what we're doing here at Walker Square, that you can look into. We have very strong communication programs here at Walker's, including ESL, adult high school, and GED. And overall, MATC is the largest of the 16 technical colleges in the state of Wisconsin. And actually, there's one thing that we never really talk about, but I looked it up the other day. I used ChatGPT for a second, right? And I said, tell me a little bit about MATC, right? And actually, it told me that we are the largest non-for-profit technical college in the entire country. We serve over 30,000 students a year across our 5 locations, and that's a big deal. You know, it's a big deal of the footprint that we have and the impact that we have in this community. We also are the proud home to Milwaukee PBS, and we offer over 180 degree programs. And also, it's very, I think, a point of pride is that we are one of the most diverse higher education institutions in the entire Midwest. So that's very proud. We're very proud of that. Our average age of our students is 29 years old. So that means our students have multiple responsibilities in their lives and are juggling many things. Their work, obviously, many of them are working 2 jobs, and also their family life, taking care of their kids. There's so many things that they're doing, but they're coming here. They're coming here to upskill. They're coming here to get an education and to really provide a better life for their families. We have all kinds of learners, which I think is very exciting. We have adult learners through our adult basic education. We have high schoolers that come to us for dual enrollment opportunities. We have career-focused programs, and then we have those students that come to us that want to get the first 2 years under their belt before they transfer to the college or the university of their choice. And the impact is really local. So 90% of our graduates stay right here in the state of Wisconsin. And that is an amazing number, because that just shows you the impact that it has on the community. And during my first year as president, I've focused on engagement and strategy. First, engagement. From day one, I prioritized that I would work directly with our students, our staff, our faculty members, our community to understand it better. And we kicked off things with Cafecito and Cruise right here at Walker's, which is always a great event where I get to talk to our students, faculty, and staff in a very casual atmosphere, have a cup of coffee, and talk about what's on their minds. I also launched presidential roundtables while we were going through our the planning for our strategic plan, and go into each campus, talk to community leaders, industry leaders about that plan and how we would launch that plan. And then also to build relationships and plug into regional efforts. I've become very involved in different community organizations, such as the MAC's Leadership Council, the Greater Milwaukee Committee, Wisconsin Policy Forum, Milwaukee Rotary, and the Higher Education Regional Alliance. It's important for me to be involved in all these because really it gives MATC a voice at the table. It makes people understand across this region the importance of what we do here and what the needs of our students are and what the needs of our community. Second, focus on strategy, right? And we had just, when I came on board, we were just ending our latest strategic plan. And we had accomplished many things under the direction and the leadership of Dr. Martin. And when I came into the position, we also were looking at creating a new strategic plan to lead us forward into the next 5 years here in the community. And we launched like I said, through those roundtables, try to get feedback from our community to make sure that our strategic plan and the priorities of that strategic plan are aligned with Ascend Together. And in Ascend Together, we're looking at student success being one of the priorities. Probably our biggest priority, right? Because our students come first. And we want to make sure our students gain the knowledge and skills that they need to be successful. Secondly, community trust. That's why many of you are here today, right? Making sure our partnerships expand regional economic opportunity for everyone and that we are connected with the community. And then the third priority is caring culture. Making sure our employees model care and professionalism in every single interaction. Because those interactions not only impact our faculty and staff internally as employees, but those interactions also impact how we treat our students and the interactions that we have with our students on a daily basis. And so that professionalism and modeling that care is extremely important for us to be able to achieve that. So this plan won't sit on a shelf in dust, right? It's something that is going to be put into action. And we have created goals that are going to be executed in the next 5 years. Every year we'll have different goals that are aligned with the strategic plan and those three priorities. But if we look forward to 5 years from now, I think that's a very important thing is what are we trying to achieve? What are the what I call big targets for the bold targets for the future? The first one is that we want to return our enrollment to where it was nearly 10 years ago. Even though we've had 4 consecutive years of enrollment increase across our campuses and our location here at Walker's, we're still not where we were prior to the pandemic. The pandemic hit us hard, and everybody hard, but particularly this institution because the students that we serve. And so we are getting back there. I think by next year we'll be back to pre-pandemic enrollment numbers. But from 5 years from now, I want us to be where we were about 10 years ago. So that is a bold target, and we're going to work with everybody to make sure that we hit that. Because not only do our students need that, but it is also a sustainability issue for the institution to make sure that we're continuing to serve more students and doing a better job of that. Secondly, is something that we're going to be working on, something called the Carnegie Student Access and Earnings Classification. This just came out this year. I'll explain a little bit about what that means. So Carnegie is a classification system that normally classifies institutions that are research universities. And so you'll hear a lot about this in the community, such as UWM is a Research One university. A Research One university according to this Carnegie classification system. They did something differently this year, and they did the classification system for 2-year colleges. It's something that they had never done in their history. But it's important to us, and really can serve as a guidepost for us for the future. So they basically did 2 things. They're looking at 2-year colleges and looking at access being one. And the second thing is earnings of graduates. 2 things, right? And they basically classified 2-year colleges throughout the country. When you look at MATC, when they classified MATC when it comes to access, they had 3 tiers. We came up on the top tier because we are truly an access institution. Access for all, do a great job of welcoming everybody into this institution. But when you look at the second piece, which is earnings, student earnings on graduation, we fell into the 3rd tier, the top of the 3rd tier, which to me is not acceptable. We can do much better. In the next 5 years, we're going to be working very diligently to get us to at least that 2nd tier where most 2-year colleges in the country are, that 2nd tier. What does that mean? Well, looking at our programs to make sure our programs are delivering education and the knowledge that students need to get family-sustaining wages when they graduate. Secondly is working with our partners in the community to make sure that our students are getting the wages that they deserve upon graduation, which is also a big deal because sometimes we don't think of that, but there are disparities when it comes to individuals in the earnings here in this community. We've got to make sure that our partners, our community partners, our industry partners understand that. And so we'll be doing a lot of many other things, that's also doing many more interactions with our educational partners like UWM to to make sure that more of our students are transferring upon graduation, because that will also raise earnings in the future for those individuals. Again, economic mobility has to be an imperative for this institution, for this community. And the way we'll achieve that is together, and trying to work together to make sure that we're providing the right programs, that individuals are getting the right wages, and making sure that we're getting them to the right opportunities for transfer to the college or university of their choice. So during this time, we're focusing on many things and making sure that our elected officials are also very in tune with what's happening here at the institution. There are many things happening at the state and federal level that are impacting our institution. Each state funds community colleges and technical education differently, right? In Wisconsin, we're grateful to have a mix of different types of revenue. We have student tuition, we have local property taxes, state funding, and federal funding. Each of these is integral to a puzzle. That puzzle that creates the funding that we need to provide the workforce that this region really needs. And we have been very proactive on our end to make sure that even though there have been some shifts in funding and other things at the federal and state level, that we're getting the resources that we need in order to be successful. Federally, MATC relies on federally funded Pell Grants and other success services. And I don't know if you know this, but just a couple of months ago, there were some proposals made in Congress that would have greatly limited Pell Grants for our students. So 90% of our students are part-time. And some of the proposals that were put in that were in the legislation suggested that students would limit, students would have to take more credits in order to be considered part-time, and also even full-time, to be considered full-time students have to take even more credits. This would have negatively impacted our students and our institution. And actually, when we did the numbers, it would have cost the college and students $12 million. So it was a very big deal to us. We had great support from legislators and others. The state did a lot of advocacy on our behalf of the state system to make sure that that legislation did not pass. So we are in a much better place because it did not pass, but we're still to continue to be very vigilant about this, because even though it didn't pass this year, we have no way of knowing what legislation will be proposed in next year's fiscal budget. So we'll continue to work on that from a federal standpoint. On a not so positive note, actually a very negative note, unfortunately, there were some cuts to PBS stations across the nation. Our PBS station relies 19% of its budget, or $2 million, comes from the federal government, and that was done this year. So that means that we, as an institution, PBS, will be working on finding ways of alternatively funding our PBS station. The $2 million hit, 20% of that budget is a big hit to that organization. I myself, a child of immigrants, learned a lot of my English from watching PBS as a child. So to me, PBS in general, and obviously Milwaukee PBS, has a strong place in my heart, and we want to make sure that what the great programming that they offer on a daily basis continues to be something that is offered to generations to come, and it's not something that is short-circuited because of short-sightedness. So I hope that you will join me in supporting our PBS station as it works through a lot of that to make sure that we get the money that we need. So as state and federal discussions continue, we'll continue to keep you posted and how we can advocate for resources. We have also had a couple of scares on a couple of things, which I'll just share. Just right here at Walker's, we do a lot of community education. It's a mainstay of this center and what we provide for the community. There were some rumblings that they actually were withholding about $800,000 in funding that provides for that community education. Fortunately, that funding was released, and so we were able to get those funds and continue to do all the great things, the support that we provide to students here at Walker's and throughout our other locations. In addition to that, we have a considerable amount of Perkins funding, which is another federal grant that helps us with technical education support, and that also has been under the microscope at the federal level. Thankfully, that also has not been touched this year. But we continue to see that this is going to be an ongoing issue for the next several years. And again, we want to make sure that we are advocating as an institution. But I need all of you in this room and across this region to continue to advocate as well to your legislators, to let them know, not just because it's important to MATC and its viability, but it's important to our students, it's important to our community. We can't go without having the community education programs we have here, like our ESL, our GED, and others that are so critical to really getting people to where they need to want to be, really, right? And get them to the point that they actually can pursue an actual 2-year degree or certificate with the college and to make a better life for themselves and their families. So I hope that you will join me in continuing to advocate with your legislators, whether it be and it means also at the state level as well as at the federal level, to make sure that they understand how important all this funding is. Now, I would say with all these changes that are going on at the federal level, I would be remiss not to mention some recent news and some shared concerns. Due to requirements and challenges coming out of Washington, we had to restructure some of our departments at the college. There's been a lot of concern, legitimate concern, I think, about how that's going to impact our students. And I just want to let you know that we're doing a lot of these changes in order to really to protect our students and retain our federal funding, and that at no point will we reduce the services that we provide to our students. They may look a little bit different than they look today, and they take a little different shape, but at the same time, we are continuing to provide the services that our students need. And that's my commitment to all of you. That will happen. No matter how it looks, it will be always students first, and making sure that those students are helped the way they need to be helped. I'm grateful for all of you for being here today. It's really a pleasure to see so many of you come out. It's really, really nice. I promise that we're not sitting silent about all these important issues. We're fighting for our students. We're going to continue fighting for our students to make sure that they have the opportunities that they deserve. Before you go on the tour, and I have things, and I hand over things to Dr. Gomez, I want to highlight some of the, and she's going to highlight some of the public-private partnerships we've built in recent years. I want to close with this. It's really an honor to be with all of you here today. All of you, some of you are building your own companies, have built your own companies, built careers, and really have shaped the region that we call home. And at MATC, we really believe that education transforms lives and has the powerful engine that really will lead to a greater economy for this region. But we can't do this work alone. We really need everybody in this room and so many others across the region in order for that to happen. You understand the power of talent, strategy, and long-term thinking. And so your insights and your networks are essential to our shared future here in this region. So thank you for your support. Thank you for being here today. Gracias. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cruz. How about one more round of applause for Dr. Cruz? Wonderful. Well, before we engage you in some high-carb pastry trees and such. But just wanted to thank the partners that are here today. Special thank you to United Way, St. Augustine Prep, obviously my home, that's where I was the founding principal. Welcome, Bridget. Site staffing is here. The CEO of Seeds of Help, Tenor High School, who sends about 100 of their seniors to MATC for new enrollment every year. So Joey is here. Yeah. We have the Ebenezer Child Care team here today, so thank you for that. Thank you. We have Hanan here. Hanan is one of our CEOs, and we teach classes out of there also, so welcome. The Hunger Task Force is here. There's our Hunger Task Force. There you are. Walker Square, like many of our locations, we do have a food pantry here available to our students. Let's see, we have Walker's Point Youth and Family Center. I know I'm not, but there you are. Good morning. Thank you. Our Milwaukee Community Crossroads, formerly Milwaukee Christian Center, is here. Welcome, Karen and team. The Well Point Care Network is here. So thank you, Krista, for being here. Wonderful. We have Daryl Davidson from the city of Milwaukee. Where's Daryl? There you are. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Excellent. My good friend Rick from Maximus is here. So welcome, Rick. Nice to see you again. And my very good colleague Javier from Concordia. Javier Lopez, where are you, sir? There you are, front and center as always. Thank you. The Southside Organizing Center, we have Tammy here today. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And Lori is here also from Southside. Our local 18 sheet metal, Jack is here today. Where's Jack? There you are, officer. Very good. Our Latino Entrepreneurial Network, Anina's here. Welcome. Thank you. Our Menominee Valley partners are here. Katrina, are you here? We have Ignite Child Development, Victoria, who's just down the street. We need to set up a site visit. Excellent. Our good friends from across the street, Site Staffing, very close partners to us. Thank you so much for everything. Our League of Women Voters is here, Esperanza. Very good. Nice to see you. Anya from Maximus is here. Maximus is right there. They want to work out of Walker Square, so thank you so much, sir. We have, Hanan is here, obviously, again, so thank you guys for coming out. Walker's Point Youth and Family Center, Celestian. Oh, there you are, very good, thank you. Our Hunger Task Force, Ruth is here, and then La Causa. Luis, where are you from La Causa? Very good, nice to see you again, sir. So thank you to all our partners. We'll be doing this again, as Dr. Cruz said. We want to invite you to enjoy refreshment. Information on tours. Who is the best person who can give me information on how we're going to do the tours today?
In about maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we'll congregate a group over here and I'll walk you through. I'm Carol Boss, the Associate Dean for Manufacturing, Construction, and Transportation Programs. And I'm happy to show you some of our labs that are here. Welding, bricklaying, plumbing, carpentry are all here and growing. We'll be adding electricity here as well. So there's things to see if you're interested. If you've never seen our lab environments, we're growing here for our manufacturing, construction, and transportation programs. So I'll let you get some coffee and some pastries and maybe a little bit of conversation yet, and then we'll leave from that area around the elevator, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Okay.
Perfect, Carol. Thank you. And then we have my team over there. If you can all raise your hand, we have information on IET, GED, adult high school, and English language learning classes if you'd like to learn more. Very good. Thank you. Wonderful to see all of you. Están en su casa. Thank you.
Contigo la distancia, Yeah, you will.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, here it is.
And truly, just got down, you know, I scheduled that. I know we're. So I don't remember what I already said, no, I won't. Yeah. Of course. No, but I'm glad the hard way. It's great to know. We have I never went for early childhood. I was asking for college. Because I don't technically, again, I'm just this student's so even when they're pursuing a career Spanish, they'd rather do whatever they are dreaming in Spanish rather than English. So I see an opportunity there for those kind of students. That's really good to know. Now she's gonna, I think it's handshake, and then she's gonna copy us. Yeah. I know. I'm like, this was a great event just for either connecting or reconnecting. Well, take care. Nice to see you too.
Come on.